going to have a look at a track today for an artist in California. This is an artist I've done a bunch of work for before, a couple of full albums. This is the start of a new EP, and the really interesting thing with this EP is, as opposed to the previous work we've done, where they've been kind of fully produced songs, where some of them might have had 7, 8, 9 guitar parts added to them, kind of the full set of overdubs. The intent with this, from the writer and producer, is that it sounds like a band that are recording in the same room at the same time. So really, no overdubs. So what that maps to here is a single guitar part at any one point. As you'll see towards the end, we ended up bending the rules on that a little bit, but that was a really interesting way to kind of tackle the song here. Instead of picturing how it would be layered up to kind of create the full image, what I've had to do here is write basically a part that is played over the verse, a part over the chorus, a part over the intro. Other things that influences, of course, is that I use the same guitar for everything. Every single part on this track is the same guitar. It's almost all the same amp model in the Kemper. It's a Dr. Z Carmen gear. There's a pedal I applied on top for the chorus to make it a little bit heavier. You'll see there's some double tracking at times, but effectively it's one guitar part throughout. And where we use double tracking, it was just to make it sound wider, as opposed to make it sound like multiple guitar players. So let's dig into the track, and I'll show you the parts that were added. The song itself is nice and consistent harmonically. The verse pattern is going between a kind of open E5 voicing down to B sus4. That's a repeating pattern, and then the chorus shifts between C sharp minor and A major. So kind of firmly in the key of E major, which is nice. It gives some kind of nice open string option. So here's a snippet of the verse. And in the chorus. So that's the overall feel of the song. The other thing that the songwriter requested here was to write a riff that we put at the start of the song. So my parts would actually come in before the rest of the song. Because it's all recorded to a click track, that's easy enough. We kind of shunt the track across 5 bars so that I get a 1 bar count in, and then a 4 bar riff, which then continues. So let's look at that first riff, which is really what happens over the intro, the break after the first chorus, and then the outro. What I'm actually going to do here is show something that we didn't use. And the first idea I came up with, which we kind of settled on, it was too happy and bouncy for the track, was to really take advantage of those open strings and give it that kind of sound, with a very kind of jangly sort of cap on it. So it could have sounded something like this. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I laid that down first, sent it over, and the client kind of rightly pointed out it was too bright for this sound. So we came up with another idea, and I'll show you how I landed on that one now. So I took a different approach here. I went capo on 2, which kind of put me in the key of, or the shape of D, still in the key of E. So I took the top string down to D. So I'm in drop D, capo on 2. So I'm back in E major, as it were. The first thing I came up with was actually very close to the riff I used, which was I didn't want to repeat that 4 times in a row. It would have been a bit samey. So it's kind of one of my favourite things at that point, is you start chiseling away at an idea and see how you can shape it. So it became kind of like an A, B, A, C start riff. Effectively, so you have one part repeated twice with 2 variations. So the first thing you hear is with the quarter note at the start instead of the 8th note. Second time around you go full 8th note. And then a slightly more aggressive ending. Back to the first one. And then the little kind of higher phrase before it comes back in. So I'll play it along with the track. It'll start with a click track, and then I'll play the part I played before the rest of the song came in, going into the intro. It'll make sense when you hear it. playing this, you can see how I put the riff up front and then it comes in and keeps repeating. There was one little bit of studio trickery I did. When I played the riff up front, I put that on a separate track, panned that pretty much central. Then when the rest of the band comes in, it double tracked, which split left and right. So it's effectively kind of center mono while it's on its own. Then when everything comes in, it becomes panned hard right and left stereo. And when I say the rest of the band, the other things are on the track, the drums, bass, rhythm guitar track, and all the vocals. So I'm kind of working to a pretty full canvas already. So that was the intro and main riff, which repeats. Let's move on to the verse. The verse and the intro and the break all have the same harmonic structure, that kind of E5 to B sus4. So I basically played a kind of trimmed down variation of the intro riff over the verse. I also put a tremolo pedal on so that it just sonically differentiates it from what you've just heard. I didn't double track the verses, so when it's the riff, it's big, and then when it's the verse, it kind of comes in and has the tremolo affected. So the kind of cut down version of the intro riff, I think, was and that catches the C sharp as it moves into the chorus. So I'll play that along with the track, and you'll hear where it sits. That kind of idea. So next up, the chorus. Interesting thing with the chorus here is because I'm again aiming for that single guitar part feel, I wanted to create a rhythm part first and foremost, but that had some movement in it. So there was a hook in the rhythm part, as opposed to dropping down to a single note kind of idea. At that point, I think some of the weight of the track would have kind of collapsed in. So I wanted the song to sound bigger at this point, but not have to lose the rhythm. So kind of my favourite idea is that I love kind of writing parts that incorporate kind of rhythm and melody at the same time. So a kind of couple of open style voicings, which basically a C sharp minor 7, and then I took a C sharp minor 9 and I guess back to another C sharp minor 7 on top, so I got the voicing moving over. And then do the same on the A, where you've got a sus2. I guess technically a sus2 sharp 4 if you want to get fancy with the naming. So I keep that melody naming, the melody movement on top of the chord. So and that creates a way that the rhythm part sounds like it's moving, but it is moving, but it's still a kind of fat sounding rhythm part. I did double track this again, same guitar, same sound on either side. It's just really for width is the reason of doing that. On one of the double tracks, on one of the parts, I did an octave run at the end, which I'll play now. On the other one, I didn't, so there's a slight deviation. The other thing you'll note here is that I'm no longer in drop D and I'm no longer capoed. So slightly breaking the rules of how you might play this live, but for the sake of the recording, it's very similar tone. You'd struggle to kind of decipher what's happened here with the tuning and the capo. So here's what got added to the choruses. And then at that point, the original riff the kind of intro riff comes back in for the break over the between the chorus and the second verse. So that's really all the main parts I added. So that's your intro riff, your verse, and your chorus. Having done that, and then we reviewed it with the producer, we came back and said, all right, we'll bend the rules a little bit. We'll put a couple of fills in. Okay, so the fill we put over the first break, again, this is just over the E to B chord progression. So plenty of open string utilization here, and just a simple melody. I think it's... So kind of playing a melody on the B string while keeping the open E ringing out. Kind of creates a slight bit of thickness and also a bit of dissonance that works well. There's a bit of delay on the sound, and this is where there's an overdrive on top of the amp model. Same amp model, same guitar, same pickup, same everything. So really, if you were doing this all live, Apart from the slight magic trick you'd have to do with the drop D and the capo, you could do this, sound-wise, you could get this with 1 amp sound and a couple of pedals. I'll play what I played now along with the track, you can hear it. I've also left in the riffs that I played, so the intro riff is stereo panned over this part. So there you go, no serious chops on display here, just a real simple melody that kind of worked nicely. It's not meant to be flashy, it's not that kind of song, it doesn't warrant a big flashy guitar solo. So final part of the outro, we didn't want anything flashy again, it's kind of a melody. I'll show you an alternate take I did in a moment, but this is what's landed on the track. A real simple melody first and foremost. With a variation second time through. It's just another layer. Like I say, it's not particularly intrusive. It's not going to jump out the speaker. It's just an extra something over the outro. So I'll show you how that lands in the track here. And now the variation. There's a nice little layer that sits over the top to say add something but doesn't get in the way of anything else. So that's really how we wrapped up the track. There was one other thing I did, just to give an option. I laid down something a little bit more note heavy over the outro. Let me show you that now. So I know we said no overdubs, but it doesn't hurt to throw one in. The producer is unlikely to use this, but I did lay down an option of a slightly more note heavy solo on the outro. It's a part of the track really. They might turn around later and go, do you know what, that it can take it, that kind of thing fits. I don't think so, but I'll show you what I played just for fun. This is just over the E to B, so harmonically it's pretty straightforward. E major scale effectively. This is what came out. So again, nothing, Steve Vai's not going to lose any sleep over that. It's a straight ahead melodic major scale solo, a few little octaves thrown in. As I say, I don't think that's going to make it onto the final version of the track because the simpler melody that we played first was more appropriate for it, but it doesn't hurt to give any options. So that was the whole thing. As I say, with the exception of some double tracking that took place, it really is one guitar part throughout, with that tiny overdub over after the first chorus and that melody laid over the outro. It's kind of a far cry from a more produced track, and really if you were playing that live, you could put those parts in, or you could leave them out and it would still sound fine. So there's nothing here that a 4-piece band couldn't do live. And I think if you heard the final mix, which I haven't yet, but if you heard it as I think it will come out, it's going to sound pretty live and not overly stacked. So job done in that regard. There's a couple more tracks on the EP which I'm really looking forward to playing on. I don't know yet if it will be the same guitar, same amp sound. We'll see what those tracks need, but it's certainly a similar approach where we're not looking for a heavily layered production. So great fun as always. Hope that was a useful look into it. A little bit different than other tracks we've looked at. So thanks very much for watching.